All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of Owning Your Sexual Self. I have a guest on with me all the way from Spain. It is PM time, her time as she jumped on here. And I have with me today Elena Solovyeva. Did I say it
Va.
right?
Solovyeva.
Solovyeva. It's like I tried so hard. And she is also a creator in this realm in the sex industry, if you will. I'm excited to talk with you today about your audiobook app for spicy and romance the related things. Different than, as you said, we're different than Dipsy. I know I've had a podcast with the founder of Dipsy on here. So that those were short stories, and we're going to get into more what a tempt is and how that's different, and really how that can help combat against sexual frustration and desire and all of that things that a lot of women are experiencing these days. So I'd love to hear from you, Elena. Thank you again for coming on the show, and I'd love to hear how you got started in all of this. I know, like me, I didn't grow up thinking, oh, I'm gonna be a sex therapist when I grow up, right?
No.
I just kind of they call their way to us, and it just like we feel aligned with it, we go with it. So how did you land here?
Yeah, so first of all, Rachel, thank you for having me here because I'm a huge fan of your podcast and I admire the work that you guys do and all the speakers that you host on your podcast. So that's why I'm happy to make my contribution. So, my journey to Tempt really came from a mix of things. First of all, my background in tech, a genuine love for psychology and interest in psychology, and this drive I always had in my life to make the life of women better. Honestly, I didn't know how exactly that would all come together at first, but I was really lucky to have the partner by my side. Her name is Anna, and she shared this passion with me. So about 5 years ago, we started having a lot of conversations about, well, okay, how could we truly help women? We actually began with a small coaching project around setting goals and relationships. But something interesting kept coming up during our customer interviews. Women were not as interested in goal setting
Mm.
as they were in intimacy and sex. And that kept popping up. At the same time, I was studying psychoanalysis and had just taken a course on sex therapy. And suddenly everything just clicked for me. I realized that relationships and intimacy are essential parts of our everyday lives. And they are the heart of so many challenges that women face. So there is this frustration around sexual desire, especially during the times of transition like postpartum or menopause. And then, of course, there is this taboo we know around talking about sex and talking openly about sex, not to mention the lack of real sex education. So many pieces just started falling into place. But there is another interesting thing that we discovered during the same interview with customers. Most women didn't want to feel like they were being educated or fixed. They wanted to explore these things in a more natural and fun way. And then we realized then, okay, it has to be an entertaining product, essentially. And when you think about it, of course, content comes first to mind, and it's the perfect medium because it lets you escape and explore at the same thing. So we also know that 85% of women have so-called responsive desire, meaning that we need the right context, romantic dates, flirting, or tender moments to get in the mood. But let's face it, no, like in reality, what time do we have for that in our chaotic lives? That's where actually content comes in, because like you can listen to the content while you are doing chores or while you commute. And it is that context that helps you tap in your desires without needing everything to be perfect in your life. And I wasn't actually super familiar with the industry of romance novels at that time. But when I started exploring it, I just realized how huge it is. And it's like, the important thing, how it evolved since I saw these books on my grandmother's shelves.
Mhm.
So and romance has history, right? It's historically been popular. It was one of the most profitable genres and segment of the publishing industry. But earlier generations had much more internalized shame about the genre. And in recent years, the readership has blossomed into full fandom, right? A loud and proud crowd, community of customers hungry not only for books, but they also love everything which comes with books, like bonus scenes, merch, meet and greets. And the publishing industry would be far more troubled without these readers, because they read a lot. So compare their reading habits with the reading habits of just average genre, and you will see that the customers consume 15 books a month on Tempt, a month. And on average, for other genre, it's 2 books a year. So it's uncomparable, right?
Wow.
And Book Talk brought actually younger readership to this genre and gave additional boost to the industry. So combine it with the fact that the sales of romance fictions grew 37% last year, and it's clear and obvious that pleasure positive content is on the rise.
Mhm.
So that's how we landed on steamy romance novels as the foundation of Tempt. But we're not stopping here. Our ultimate goal is to create a space where women can safely explore their desires with no shame or guilt, and reignite that part of their lives.
Mhm. Yeah. And I'm just thinking of my own book club, and I think book clubs in general are something that really have sparked more in the last few years. I know many of my friends now are in book clubs, whether that be in person or online, and I'm very grateful for the group of women that I get to meet with, and they're recommending books, or we get books on a monthly basis that I would have never chosen for myself. And it being in this industry as a sex therapist, I feel like sometimes the romance novels can kind of die out for me. It's not something that I want to necessarily listen to on the regular, because I do this work on the regular. Like my conversations are about sex all day, every day. But
Ah,
the average human, right, human woman, that's not necessarily the case. So I think of them, and they're like, okay, well, they use the word smut, right? Like, how is the sexual content? And it's like, okay, how spicy is this? Is this something that I'm gonna like? Does it fall into the category of dark romance? Right? There's all these different rabbit holes that you can go down. And so when you say for Tempt, would you say it's more like smutty based, or is it more lovey romance based?
no, it's not a clean romance. It's a steamy romance. And yes, you can explore different subgenres, like dark, fantasy, or like contemporary, whatever floats your boat, right? But for me, probably the best thing about romance novels, as you mentioned, book clubs, yeah, it's true, but this is the way to initiate conversations about sex, right? It's about sharing with others something, whether it's about a book. But it's better that these conversations start, right? Because this is actually the stigma surrounding sex therapy is big, and this is the light approach to get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tell clients often, I'm like, use the books or use my podcast essentially as your scapegoat, right? Like if you want to share something with your partner and to be able to say, hey, I was listening to this podcast, or I was reading this book, and this is what the man did to the woman, or this is what was described in it, and that's something that I would like to try with you, or that's something that I would like more of in our relationship. And I think that's helpful too, and it helps to bridge that gap of that fear, right? That fear base that we feel around bringing up these conversations with partners. But then in the space of friendships, I've been doing pure romance parties for over a decade now, and I see the magic that happens in those spaces when you get women together in that comfortable, playful setting. And I feel like audiobooks probably bring that same feel, right? Comfortable, playful. But it's literally magical to see how these women just this open up in those settings, and they're able to share more and ask questions. And yes, there might still be shame present, but they're finding it easier to overcome in those spaces. And I get that same feel from our book club too, right? We read a book that has smut in it, and they're like, well, what do you guys think of that? Like that made me like tense up, or the another one would be like, that was really hot for me. And again, it's like you can have these differing views on it, and we can have a discussion around it, which I think.
Absolutely. And it's just one thing, though romance novels, in my opinion, they have more advantages, right? And so, for example, we all know that romance is a unique genre by and for women, and it's one of the few forms of entertainment that truly prioritizes the female pleasure. And it depicts intimacy and relationship written from women's perspective. And they create this safe place for women to explore their desires in a way that feels kind of relatable, I would say, and even empowering. And one of the best things about romance novels is that they give both authors and readers creative freedom. So authors can take their stories anywhere because there is a sense of safety, knowing that readers trust them, trust the journey will lead. This journey will lead to emotional fulfillment and happy ending, and this trust authors take and to uncover more complex intimacy, and while readers feel empowered to follow to the places where they might not have explored otherwise.
Mhm.
And like we all know that romance novels allow for limitless imaginations. That's for sure. Yeah, you can erase or invent whatever you want. It's not the filters on Instagram covering something up. It's about creating whatever feels most exciting and true to your fantasies.
Mhm.
So yeah, they do enrich our sex life by stimulating imagination, helping us understand what turns us on, of course, and give us some new ideas to explore. But what's more, I think romance novels are empowering. They often feature strong female characters, empowering like navigating their own situations and transition phases in their lives, from divorce to finding love later in life.
Mhm.
Uh, and this representation can resonate deeply with readers, helping them feel seen and understood during the times that when they might feel isolated and invisible, probably.
Mhm.
So it's a kind of romance novels give them permission to feel sensual again, to engage in fantasies without pressure.
Mhm.
And by combining this, all the elements, creativity, pleasure, imagination into one experience, giving women permission to explore their desires without shame. So I do like everything about it, and like one simple thing even. So in romance novels they name feelings,
Mhm.
so they actually articulate their feelings, and like not many of us can articulate our feelings, right?
Yeah.
Or the characters of the book, they feel something, and they feel it like they're connected with their bodies, and it also teaches us how to be connected with our bodies.
Mhm.
So it's interesting. At Tempt, we had a study on the impact of steamy romance novels on various aspects of female sexuality. And 86% of readers, they say that reading steamy romance novels enhances their sex life. And it's clear that the audience is taking cues to heart. And 60% of respondents indicate that reading steamy novels positively affects their libido. And also, like a big part of our audience, they share the ideas. Like we often hear a story when I heard something that was so exciting that I shared with my hubby.
Mhm.
So that's what we like, and that's what we actually celebrate at Tempt. We love this adventurous spirit, and we encourage this adventurous spirit. And our readers are not just consuming these stories to relax and escape, which is actually like the primary goal, right? And they are using them as a blueprint for their own lives, from role-playing scenes to trying new forms of intimacy. Our audience is finding ways to make their fantasies like on the pages to reality in their bedroom. And we are here to provide more just content. We are here to ignite imagination, encourage every woman to write her own passion story. And that's exciting. That's our exciting goal.
Yeah, and I love that you spoke on the creativity piece of it too, because so often, in the couples and clients that I work with, they're like, "Oh, I don't know what I want. I don't know." Right? When you say desire or what turns me on, I simply don't know. I've never explored that. I've really never thought about that. And often I'm recommending books for people to listen to, and just to get that creativity and get those sort of juices flowing, and ideas flowing. But you're exactly right. I can even, speak from my own experience when I'm listening to a book, and right, my husband's in the car with me, and we turn on the car, and boom, here comes my smutty romance book that I'm listening to. And he's like, "Oh, okay." And then we'll have open discussion in the car. I'm like, you like, and what I love too, yes, there's strong female leads in a lot of these books, but oftentimes it's the masculine leadership that comes through in these male characters in the books, and just how you can hear from their perspective the way that they adore and they admire these women, right, that they're pursuing in these books. And you hit the nail on the head too. It's like we don't talk about emotion like that in real life. So when you're reading books like this, it's like you get that deeper narrative to it. And so anyways, yeah, my husband and we have open conversations like this often. Again, I think it comes naturally with me being in this industry, but it's interesting. I can say, like, I really I want to try that, or like, oh, that sounds, I've never even heard somebody describe it in that way, or what do you think about this? Or one time I was like, does listening to this turn you on? Because he'll be sitting there playing on his phone. I'm like, are you even listening to what's unfolding right now? And he's like, yeah, it turns me on. He's like, I'm trying to distract myself because I know we can't have sex right now. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So let's like put a pin in this and like bring this up later when we're
Yeah.
back home.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's not about like you asked me at the beginning, how is it different? How the romance novel is different from the short erotic story? It's different because it's not about sex. It's not centered around sex. It includes so much more. It includes emotions. It includes how actually the characters turned out to be where they are and what led to that, right? All these complicated relationships and nuances. And actually we have different audience segments, and especially it's important for younger readership because they learn how to handle relationship. And this is also important, and we hear that, okay, so I imagine myself in her shoes, in the lead character shoes, and I think, okay, what I would do in the same situation, and why did she respond like this? And this is also a big aspect of that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And two, can we normalize that some of the things that we hear, because I think this is another thing that happens, is we read the romance novels and then we place these expectations on our partners that they should be doing this. And so sometimes if we go into that next intimate scenario with this book sort of scenario on our head, and right, I don't want it to feel like we're setting up our partners to be able to fall short. And that's where I think the communication piece is hugely important, so that sharing with your partner, like, hey, I listened to this, I want to try this sounds hot to me, right, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely. Communication with our partner is, in my opinion, number one. And I can share my story, for example, that um uh, like if I were to give one advice, right, to women is to myself actually. So it's building and maintaining a relationship with the partner is an everyday job, and it requires just as much effort as and commitment as any career. And unfortunately I didn't fully realize this until my first marriage fell apart and my second was heading in the same direction. And that was my wake-up call. I had to make a change, and I began treating my relationship with the same passion and focus I apply to my professional life. So I learned to truly listen. We learned to truly listen to each other, to have conversation without triggering our defense mechanism and launching into attacks. And over time, we developed habits that have become non-negotiable parts of our lives. For example, no matter how busy we are, we set our phones aside and talk for at least an hour a day. And we even created a format called Topic, where either of us can bring up an issue, and we can create a supportive space to discuss it without judgment. Because most of the times we talk, but we talk about some, like, there is no deep depth in the conversation, right? We talk just, okay, my day went like this, blah 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 blah, and we do not bring in intimate moments, something that really matters to us. So yeah, so this kind of conversational aspect is actually essential, and that's actually big part of the fact that we are not masters in that leads to sexual frustration, right? So and like, this topic is big, and sexual frustration is something that comes up more often than we might think. And it's not about actually any physical act of sex. It's much deeper than that. It's about our connection with ourselves first, with our partners secondly, with our bodies, and it's emotional fulfillment, and even how we perceive ourselves. And also, what we found through our work at Tempt, that women feel frustrated because they feel disconnected with their desires, and that's true. And that's especially common during this transition phases in our lives. For example, after having a baby or going through the menopause, when your body and hormones are changing, and suddenly, yeah, the things that used to turn you on, they just don't. But however, like, another part of the sexual frustration might be that in our modern life, stress has a huge impact. So take a life of a typical woman today. She's balancing her career, raising kids, and managing the household, and often carrying the emotional load for the whole family. So on a given day, she might be racing to meet a work deadline, remembering to send her children money for the school project, or worrying about your kids' well-being, and at the same time thinking about what to cook for dinner. And there's always something that needs our attention, and it feels urgent. And the challenge is that this juggling act often leads us to feeling inadequate. Like, if you are late picking up your kid from school, you start thinking, oh, am I failing to be a mom? Or if the laundry piles up, you start thinking, am I keeping the house together? If you don't have time for your partner, you think, oh, am I neglecting the relationship? And it's all connected, and it's constant internal pressure that we give to ourselves. Work, home, parenting, we want to be best in everything. And that leaves so many women feeling like they're falling short, and those feelings often heighten the stress levels, right? And as we know, stress is a huge enemy of intimacy, because our bodies switch to a different mode, a survival mode, and like, only thing our brain can actually perceive is how to get you through the day. And that's the big part of the sexual frustration. And at Tempt, we also have so many conversations with women who feel stuck in this space, wanting more passion, more intimacy, but not knowing how to ask for it, and even where to start exploring it. And the fantasy aspect helps them to get back in touch with their own needs and desires in a way that feels safe and fun. So yeah, sexual frustration actually is not about having sex at all, but it's about not feeling connected with yourself and your partner in a way that feels fulfilling. And it's something that so many women experience, but they do not necessarily talk about it. But we do need to talk about it because there are ways to overcome it and rediscover our desires and that passion again, right?
Absolutely. And yeah, I think the connection piece is the piece that's often overlooked. It's so much more than just the sex. And if the I think for women specifically, if the emotional connection is not there, the physical connection doesn't feel available, right? And it's
Oh,
opposite for men. It's like they need the physical connection to feel the emotional connection. In most cases, right? I'm just stereotypically speaking here, but yeah, that's I think if it's generally the women that is the one that's sexually frustrated or feeling like she's having difficulty connecting with her desire and her libido, then I think if it's her that needs the emotional intimacy, that's where the relationship focus should be, is that it should be focusing on, okay, well, how can I connect more with my woman? How can I help her feel more seen? How can I help her feel more supported in those household things that you were just mentioning? And then what does that do not then for our intimacy? Because I think at the end of the day, men don't necessarily want their partners to just lay there, right? And be like, okay, fine, take what you want, right? They actually want that connection. And I think sometimes men don't know how to put that into words because their mind is like, I need sex, I want sex.
absolutely. And yeah, it's right. Yeah. Yeah, and but again, this is about conversation, but my question, not my question, but actually like still, are we ready to openly admit, like to have an open conversation? And more often we are not ready yet, right? And that's why there is this stigma surrounding sex therapy. And yeah, it's hard to initiate the conversations about sexuality and intimacy. And I think that still we need to initiate these kind of conversations because and the first thing um, uh, to do is what me, you on this podcast and us at Tempt do, create this safe space for these conversations. And sometimes the space is not safe enough to start this conversation, right? In your household, for example. And the stigma around sex therapy is rooted in this long standing idea that sex is something private, almost shameful to discuss. But by creating these spaces where women feel safe to talk about their desires, whether it's a book club or whether it's your podcast, so we give them the opportunity to explore their desires, frustrations, fears, and we start to normalize this conversation. But I think that there are other aspects which are important because it's also essential to shift the focus from problems to exploration, you know. Like many women think sex therapy is only for when something is wrong, and but that's not true. Sex therapy can be a positive tool for self-growth and understanding and how important it is, and framing it actually that sex therapy enhances relationship, and it is for personal growth, and it is for personal wellness, not just something to fix the issues is important. And I believe that reframing sex therapy as a journey of self-discovery, whether it's about understanding your body or enhancing your relationship with your partner, can actually help remove some of the fear surrounding it.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm sure that like this is something that you feel in your day-to-day practice, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But what we think from my perspective, from Tempt perspective, is actually we need to meet people where they are. And not everyone is ready for deep conversations about sex. And that's okay. Not everyone is ready for deep conversations about how they are today. And sometimes starting with simple, lighter topics like and it can be less intimidating. And from there, we can gradually guide the conversation towards deeper subjects like desires, fantasies, exploration, even therapy as a resource. And the key is to be patient and offer information in ways that feel approachable and not threatening. So that's the part of the job that we do.
Yeah. And as we're coming to a close here, for Tempt, this is an app that people download. Is there a cost to it? And can you kind of give us like what does the platform look like once I'm in the app? Sort of what does it look like?
Course. So Tempt is a Steamy Romance audiobook app, and this is a subscription-based platform. The whole difference is that on Tempt you get unlimited listening to romance novels because, as I mentioned at the beginning, so these readers read a lot, and they are called avid readers, and there are plenty of them. So we brought Tempt actually for these kind of people to enjoy unlimited listening to romance novels whenever they want, and there is a single subscription fee. It's either weekly or quarterly, and you can enjoy reading without any limitations, with no like credits like they have on other platforms or coin-based. It's just pure enjoyment.
Okay, awesome. And you said once you're in the app, you can sort of filter to those different sort of tunnels that you'd like to go down to. So if I like dark romance, I can filter and see all dark romance and other out.
Yeah, of course. No, much deeper than that, actually. So, romance genre has specifics, right? We discussed that it has different tropes. Also, so many readers are mood readers. It's the term when you are looking for a book to fit your mood today. So some days you want to cry, some days you want to you want to read something, I don't know, a page turner or something. So Temp provides actually multiple ways to discover content, and so you can narrow down your search by trope. And actually, many readers, they say, "Oh, like I used to read what Book Talk recommends," but that's not necessarily what you would like, because every one of us has their unique tastes, right? And I discovered so many new to me authors on Tempt, which became my favorites. Yeah, that's because of this search system specifically for romance. So you can search by trope, you can search even by narration type, because narration is the second aspect which is so important for readers, for romance novels listeners, because the narrator is a big part of that, right? We have our favorite voices, and so you can narrow down your search whether you want the book to be with a solo narration or with duet narration or with dual narration. And then, of course, for mood readers, we have a special features when you select a book that fits your mood today. And so the discoverability is the primary aspect of Tempt. And actually, if you don't want to search, just go with the flow, go with what Tempt recommends, and it's probably gonna be better.
Yeah. Yes, and I love that. So I just looked it up in my app store. So it's Tempt and it's a kind of like a purplish background with blue and pink heart and Tempt, and it's romance audiobook. So very easy to find for listeners that are wanting to check that out. And thank you again so much for coming on the show today. I think this was a really good conversation and hopefully got some sparks flowing for people around if they're not listening to audiobooks and or spicy audiobooks rather, like how this can really make a difference in their lives for creativity and arousal and everything we discussed today. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Of course.